Trev's Hockey Show. I'm the Trev. It's too sweet. Anyway, continuing on with retired numbers. We're finally starting the New York Islanders. Finally. I'm almost done every team's first number. So we're getting somewhere. But keep in mind there's a lot more ahead of me. Anyway, it's almost fitting that the first number the Islanders retired was a former first overall pick. Probably one of the best defensive first overall picks ever picked, but we'll get into that when I give my opinion. We're going to talk about the number 5, Denis Potvin. Let's talk about it. So Potvin's 15-year career with the New York Islanders began on May 15th, 1973. That was draft day, when Potvin, as I mentioned, was drafted first overall by the second-year New York Islanders. For the Islanders, Potvin was their second consecutive first overall selection, after selecting Billy Harris in the first overall, in the 1972 amateur draft. And I think that was, without saying, the inaugural season the Islanders had was not anywhere close to the best. By upper management, he was viewed as a long-term asset to the team, which was really a mild assertion after all was said and done, and we'll dig into that. Now, Potvin would immediately make the team, and upon joining the Islanders, initially wanted to wear the number 7, which couldn't happen as the number was already being used within the team, so he had to settle for number 5. And Potvin came into the NHL with high expectations, with some potentially seeing him as the next Bobby Orr. A lot of Bobby Orr comparisons these days. Now, one of the positives that could be taken out of this first season was he got to play on the same team with his brother John. And they would play together for about 7 years on the island in 2 different stints. Another positive was that in his first season, Potvin would lead the team in scoring, putting up 54 points in 77 games. And even though the Islanders were only slightly better than the previous season, they would still miss the playoffs. For the long-term storytelling, this would be the last time the Islanders would miss the playoffs with Potvin in the lineup. It's also worth noting in his rookie season, he was awarded the Calder Memorial Trophy as Rookie of the Year. I think that would go without saying, defenseman leading your team in scoring. It wouldn't be the first time, and it wouldn't be the last time he'd lead the team in scoring, but we'll get into that. The 1974-75 season was a season of great improvement for the Islanders, going from last place in the East Division the previous season to finishing 3rd in the Patrick Division, in the process making the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. Potvin would once again lead the team in scoring with 76 points in 79 games, while adding 14 points in 17 playoff games, which saw the Islanders lose to the Flyers in the semifinals, 1 game short of a Stanley Cup appearance. Heartbreaking to say the least. It's worth noting, though, that Potvin was also nominated to the NHL's first All-Star team at the end of the season. The 75-76 season was another improvement as far as statistics for both the Islanders and for Denis Potvin. The Islanders would finish 2nd in the Patrick Division, and Potvin would again lead the team in scoring, putting up 98 points in 78 games. It's the first season in many in his career where he would finish above a point-a-game average. For a defenseman not named Bobby Orr, that was impressive, though, to put up those numbers and to have that kind of an average. Included in those 98 points was a career-best 31 goals. Potvin will be awarded the first of his 3 James Norris Memorial Trophies, given to the best defenseman in the league, as well as being nominated as the first NHL All-Star team again. In winning the Norris, he ended Bobby Orr's 8-year consecutive win streak of that trophy. He would also finish 2nd in Hart Memorial Trophy voting, which is awarded to the league MVP. And in 13 playoff games, Potvin will put up 19 points. Good enough for the team leading playoff points. Yet the Islanders would fall short again, losing the semifinals to the Montreal Canadiens. The 1976-77 season was a slight bend in the results of the past few Islanders seasons. The Islanders would again finish second in the Patrick division, and Potvin again would lead the team in points, putting up 80 points in a full 80 games, so an exact point per game year. And Potvin would get his second All-Star team nomination, but the Islanders would only play 2 rounds of playoff hockey instead of 3, with Potvin putting up 10 points in 12 playoff games. The 1977-78 season saw again a great improvement for the Islanders, which was now consisting of the familiar faces that we kind of came to know in hindsight: your Trottiers, your Bossies, your Smiths, your Bournes, your Nystroms, just to name a few. The Islanders would finish first in the Patrick division, as well as win their first of 3 Clarence S. Campbell Bowls as Clarence Campbell regular season champions. So, statistic-wise, they won the Campbell Bowl for that. We'll go into definitions with that trophy at some point. Now, while Potvin didn't lead the team in scoring this season, he did manage to put up 94 points in 80 games. So, I mean, if that's not good enough for close to team lead, I don't know what is. Earning his first NHL All-Star nomination. Yet, for as good as the Islanders had become, they would end up losing in 7 games in the playoffs, with Potvin putting up 4 points in 7 games. He'd also be awarded his second James Norris Memorial Trophy this season. So, 2 already. That's pretty damn good. 1978-79 was by far Potvin's best statistical season. The Islanders also benefited from this too, finishing first overall in the NHL by 1 point. That's how tight it got then. Potvin would put up career highs all across the board. In 73 games, he tied his career best in goals with 31, while adding a career high 70 assists for a career best 101 points, becoming only the second defenseman in league history to score 100 points. First, obviously, is Bobby Orr. That should go without saying. He'd not only get his 4th NHL First All-Star Team nomination, he'd be awarded his 3rd James Norris Memorial Trophy. And while the regular season consistency stayed the same, the playoff results didn't change, for the better anyway, as in only 10 playoff games, Potvin would contribute a team-leading 11 points. So they're at the brink, but not quite over the hump. Before the start of the 1979-80 season, Clark Gillies, who was then the captain of the team, decided to step down from the role, which in turn was given to Potvin, a role he would hold until 1987. You might say, and this might have made the difference, that was probably what turned the tide. Some would say that anyway. This year, however, would turn out to be the lowest point production of Potvin's career, as he only managed to play 31 games this season due to injury. But in those 31 games, he put up 41 points and managed to return in time for the 1980 playoffs. Now, Potvin would put up 19 points in 21 playoff games, as the New York Islanders would only lose 6 games during the entirety of their playoff run, en route to a meeting with the division rival Philadelphia Flyers in the Stanley Cup Finals. It's worth noting this is the same series that gave us that thread-in-the-needle overtime winner to win the Cup. So yeah, the Islanders win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Definitely not the last. It's hard to think what difference the season makes. You go from fringe contenders to being named captain to now your first Stanley Cup. It gets better. The 1980-81 season would see the Islanders finish first overall for the second time, winning their 3rd Clarence Campbell Bowl, with Potvin putting up 76 points in 74 games, and being nominated for his 5th First All-Star Team. Potvin will also put up career playoff bests this year, as in 18 games, he put up a career best 8 goals, 17 assists, and 25 points. And the Islanders winning their 2nd consecutive Stanley Cup, now becoming back-to-back champions. The 1981-82 season saw Potvin play in only 60 games, but in those 60 games, he put up 61 points, still maintaining that point-per-game average. The Islanders again finished first overall in the league, But when, you're on a 15-game consecutive win streak late in the season, that kind of thing will happen. That record would eventually be broken sometime later. During the playoffs, Potvin would play in 19 games, putting up 21 points, as the Islanders would pull off a three-peat and win their third straight Stanley Cup by sweeping the Vancouver Canucks in 4 straight games. For the 1982-83 season, the expectation for the 3-time defending, reigning, back-to-back-to-back Stanley Cup champions is to build that dynasty now. And thanks to Potvin, why would the result be any different? In 69 games, Potvin will put up 66 points, which was the first time in 7 years that he didn't reach a point-a-game status. What a problem to have, right? Though the Islanders didn't finish first in the Patrick division, they did still make it to the playoffs, where they steamrolled their way to a 4th straight Stanley Cup, where they would beat Wayne Gretzky and the Edmonton Oilers in 4 straight games. 2 straight years, 2 sweeps. So the dynasty is officially cemented at this point. Potvin will put up 20 points in 20 games. He would match his playoff best in goals with 8. So for 83-84, the hope has to be the first team since the 1955 to 1960 Montreal Canadiens to win 5 straight Stanley Cups. And they played like they wanted it. Not to say that they didn't, because, who doesn't play like they want to win the Stanley Cup unless you're purposely tanking? The Islanders were second overall in the league, finishing 15 points behind those same Edmonton Oilers they beat the season before. With Potvin putting up 85 points in 78 games, and even being nominated to the second NHL All-Star team for the second time in his career. During the playoffs, the Islanders would only lose 4 games during the entirety of their playoff run, and would even go as far, stretching all the way back to 1980 to this present time that we're in, winning a record 19 consecutive playoff rounds, and with a rematch of the 1984 Stanley Cup Finals against the Edmonton Oilers, would lose the Stanley Cup in 5 games. Now, Potvin would only put up 6 points in 20 games. The sad thing here is one dynasty ends, and then you look at it from the other end, another dynasty begins. But as of this recording, though, the Islanders have not been as close to a Stanley Cup final since. Hopefully one day that changes for them, right? The 1984-85 season would see Potvin fall back down below the point per game number, putting up only 68 points in 77 games. But he did also set the all-time points by defenseman record, passing Bobby Orr when he scored his 915th career point. So that's not a bad thing to do, break a Bobby Orr record. And the Islanders would still be competitive enough to qualify for the playoffs, finishing 3rd in the Patrick division, and Potvin would add 5 points in only 10 playoff games, as the Islanders would eventually be eliminated by eventual Stanley Cup finalists and division rivals, the Philadelphia Flyers. 85-86 would see Potvin continue to chase defensive records, when on January 28th, 1986, Potvin would score his 271st career goal, which broke yet another Bobby Orr record, along the way of putting up 59 points in 74 games to go with 1 assist in 3 playoff games. 86-87 would see Potvin limited to only 58 games due to injury, but he did manage to set the points bar amongst defensemen when on April 4th, 1987, in a 6-6 tie against the Buffalo Sabres. Yeah, they tied, and it used to go as high as 6. Potvin would record his 1,000th point, becoming the first defenseman in NHL history to do so. He finished the season with 42 points, to go with 4 points in 10 playoff games. Before the 87-88 season began, Potvin would resign his team captaincy, making way for Brent Sutter to be named the 4th captain in team history. Early in the season, Potvin would play in his 1,000th NHL game, which to date makes him only one of 2 Islanders to play 1,000 games or more with the team, Brian Trottier being the other. He'd also score his 300th career goal, making him the first defenseman in league history to do that. He's hit a lot of firsts amongst defensemen. He'd finished the season with 51 points, which was 9 better than the previous season, while putting up 5 points in 5 playoff games. And at the conclusion of this season, Potvin would officially announce his retirement from the NHL at the age of 34. So with all that, let's run down some stats and such. So in his 1,060 games, he put up 310 regular season goals, 742 assists for 1,052 points, which are all team records amongst defensemen. And in the playoffs, his 185 playoff games, put up 56 goals, 108 assists, and for 164 points, which again is a team record amongst defensemen. He was named to the first NHL All-Star team 5 times, in 75, 76, 78, 79, and 81, while being named to the second NHL All-Star team twice, in 1977 and 1984. He won the James Norris Memorial Trophy 3 times, in 1976, 1978, and 1979, to go with his Calder Memorial Trophy that he won in 1974, to go along with his 4 Stanley Cups from 1980 to 83. Played in 9 NHL All-Star games, was named one of the 100 greatest players during the NHL Centennial, was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1991. Upon his retirement, he had the defenseman record for goals, assists, and points, all of which have since been broken. But the more important part, and the reason we're here, on February 1st, 1992, his was the first number retired by the New York Islanders. So here's my thoughts on the guy. For my own self, I caught the tail end of Potvin's career. I caught his last 2 seasons. But from what I saw of him, and from what I've seen in a lot of highlights and video reels and all that stuff that I've been rewatching over and over and over again, my gosh, probably one of, if not, well, he can't be better than Orr, but one of the best offensive defensemen the league has ever seen. And as I said in the beginning, probably one of the best defensemen ever drafted first overall, if not one of the best first overall picks in the history of the NHL draft. And I'm including Mario. I said one of, not the best first overall pick. One of. When it came to hitting the body, he can hit the body. When it came to scoring the goals, he can score. When it came to setting up the play, he can do that. All around, he was the perfect defenseman for the Islanders at the time. And could you imagine him anywhere else? The kind of damage he'd do there? Oh my goodness. It was a great thing to see the Islanders have a talent like that, especially in the beginning when they needed it the most. I mean, they still need it now, but getting over that expansion hump, Potvin definitely helped. It's another one of Trevs hockey shows. I want to thank you for tuning in. Don't think I don't appreciate the gesture, especially if you're here. And if you are, I appreciate it very much so. But also hit that like. And if you haven't hit that red button yet, that says subscribe all over it, you know you want to. It'll make you feel good. We're getting close to 250, which is where I want to be by the end of the year. Socials, description down below. Moving forward, as far as retired numbers goes, like I said, I got a lot still ahead of me. This is only number 31. But I'll keep bringing out what I can bring out. But either way, in the meantime, in between time, before we do some Trev, later.